Okay, now we're going to actually solve these by doing the 4 ways we solve them. So factoring, square roots, completing the square, and quad formula. Okay, so make sure that you're following the steps so you know what to do when asked. First thing, you want to make sure your equation set equal to 0 and your x squared term is positive. Factor the quadratic side, set each factor to 0, and then write as a solution set. So this doesn't equal 0, so I need to subtract 5. So I'm going to have x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 0. Now, x squared is positive, factors of 25. So 1 and 25 and 5 and 5. And the only way to get to 10 is 5 and 5. So I'll have x squared plus 5x plus 5x plus 25 equals 0. Now group. GCF of my first group is x, and this is x plus 5. Take that last term, divide by that. 25 divided by 5 is 5. So I have x plus 5 times x plus 5 equals 0. Set them both equal to 0. You get x equals negative 5. Okay? Second example, it's already equal to 0, so that's good. Now, there's that no middle term. So I need my factors of 16. So 1 and 16, 2 and 8, and 4 and 4. Now, there's no middle term, so it's a 0. So that means you have to use a 4 and 4. One is positive and one is negative. So if 0 equals x squared plus 4x minus 4x minus 16, then group it. So if 0 equals x times the quantity x plus 4, and then negative 4, and then x plus 4. So you have 0 equals x minus 4 times x plus 4. Set them both equal 0, so x minus 4 equals 0. Add 4 to both sides, so x equals 4. X plus 4 equals 0. Subtract 4, so you have x equals negative 4. Okay? And the last one, again, I need to equal it to 0, so I got to subtract the 40x. I'm going to have 4x squared minus 40x plus 64 equals 0. Now, you should notice that you can plot a GCF of a 4. You can divide everything by 4. So I have x squared minus 10x plus 16 equals 0. Get your factors as 16. You could have factored the other way, but it'll take longer for sure. So your factors is 16. So 1 and 16, 2 and 8, and 4 and 4. How do we get negative 10? Negative 2 and negative 8. So x squared minus 2x minus 8x plus 16 equals 0. Group it. Take out a GCF. Take out a GCF. Parentheses are the same. So I will have x minus 8 times x minus 2 equals 0. Set them both equal 0. If I set this first one equal to 0, I'll get x equals 8. Set the second one equal to 0, I'll get x equals 2. Okay? Solving by factoring. Solving by square roots. Make sure that square root is by itself, and then solve for the variable, and then simplify it. So I need to divide by 4. So I now have x squared equals 9/4. Now I need to take the square root of both sides. Remember to take the square root of that plus or minus. So this becomes x, not x squared, geez Louise. X equals plus or minus the square root of 9/4, which can be simplified to plus or minus 3/2. Okay? Next example, get that x squared by itself. So divide by 3 on both sides. So I now have x minus 2 the quantity squared equals 9. Got to take that square root. So plus or minus on that side. So I have x minus 2 equals plus or minus 3. Square root of 9 is 3. Now I need that x by itself, so I'm going to add 2. So remember, I'm always going to put that in front of that plus or minus and simplify. 2 plus 3 is 5, and 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Okay, last one, get that x squared by itself. So I need to add 6. So I will have 3x squared equals 18. Divide by 3 on both sides, so I have x squared equals 6. Now I need to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget that plus or minus. x equals plus or minus the square root of 6. When you put that square root of 6 into your calculator, it's gross and yucky, so you can just leave it as plus or minus square root of 6 without doing anything else. Completing the square. Okay, this is probably the most difficult one of them, the most steps. So just make sure you're kind of following along as I do the steps. I'm only going to do probably one of these examples. Okay, rearrange equation so that the variables are on one side and the constants are on the other. So we're good here. With this one, you would need to add 11. So you'd have x squared plus 10x equals 26. Okay. Add a blank space to both sides. So I will have x squared minus 12x plus blank equals 36 plus blank. Okay, find b over 2. So negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. And then square it. So negative 6 squared is 36. So I add that to both of my blank spaces. Okay, so now I have x squared minus 12x plus 36 equals 72. The air test will probably ask you for that C value, which is right there, that completing the square term. But we're going to keep going. Now we need to factor it. Now remember my lovely trick. This in here is always that b divided by 2 term. So minus 6 equals 72. So now I need to take the square root of both sides. So I have x minus 6 equals plus or minus the square root of 72. Because it's yucky. Add 6 to both sides, so you get 6 plus or minus the square root of 72. Okay? Same with this one, we'll do this one. So we have x squared plus 10x plus blank equals 26 plus blank. B divided by 2, so 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 squared is 25. So add 25 to both sides. Now we got to factor it. Remember that b divided by 2, 10 divided by 2, so positive 5. Take the square root of both sides, so I have x plus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 51. Subtract 5 from both sides. And that is how we complete the square. If you get stuck, ask. Okay, quad formula. Make sure your equation is equal to 0. Once your equation is equal to 0, you're going to plug it into that equation. Luckily for you, that equation will be on your formula sheet on the air test, so you'll be completely fine. You'll always have it. But I need to make sure it's equal to 0. So I do that 10. So I'm going to have x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. Now it equals 0, so now I just start to go. Okay, opposite of b. So the opposite of b, plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, so negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 49. So you can plug this part right here in your calculator or do it in your head. Then divided by 2. Square root of 49 is 37. So negative 3 plus or minus 7 divided by 2. You got to find both the answers. Negative 3 plus 7 is 4. Divided by 2 is 2. Negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10. Divided by 2 is negative 5.